ex-boyfriend sold his soul or channeled a demon to become a successful rapper. So I wasn't actually going to post a lot this week because I'm actually at my mom's house. I'm in her guest bedroom, but this one's really good. So she told me that she met this guy in high school. They went to high school together. He dropped out. She graduated. And actually in high school, they weren't together because he actually had a baby with like some girl that she knew. Like they weren't really friends, but whatever. He has a baby with her. She graduates. He had dropped out to become a successful rapper and like work on his rap career. After they graduate, somehow they get together. I'm not really sure the details on that, but pretty soon after they get together, she gets kicked out of her family's house. I don't really know the details on that either, but she said it's not really relevant to the story. So she moves in pretty soon after they start dating with him, his mom, and then sometimes his daughter's there. They have virtually no money. He's working a little bit. She's working at the mall. She's going to work every day. She's trying to help him provide for his daughter, and he's working on his rap career when he's not at work. He does a song that goes semi-viral around 2020. That song got attention of a big producer who lives in Los Angeles. The producer's team reaches out to him and basically tells him, hey, we want to bring you out here. We want to like work with you. And he's all excited. He goes to her. He's like, I can't believe this is happening. She's like, you need to go, baby. They fly him out. He doesn't talk to her a lot that day, but he basically just tells her like, I'm with these people. Like they're super important. They're teaching me everything I need to know. But he does FaceTime her that night while he's at the studio. He calls her the next morning. He's like, hey, I'm going to be pretty busy today. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to talk to you, but like, just so you know, everything is going really, really well. I'll tell you about it when I get home. He was supposed to fly home the next day. He was only there for 2 days. So he gets home. He's all excited. He says like, he's going to continue working with these people. I don't know if there was like a contract signed or whatever, but basically he's hook, line, and sinker. He's in with them. He tells her about the producer, and then he tells her about this girl that's like the producer's assistant or like part of his team. I'm not really sure her role, but we're just going to call her Jazz for the story. And Jazz has sort of been like the point of contact that her boyfriend is working with this whole time. Like she's the one that reaches out on behalf of the producer. She's the one that makes all the travel arrangements. So the night that he gets home, after he tells her all about his trip, all about all the people, he just basically tells her, hey, I might be different for the next couple weeks because I'm in work mode. Like this is what I'm doing now. I need to take it seriously. So like don't be offended if I'm a little bit different or if I'm a little bit distant because I'm not going to be able to dedicate as much time to you as I have in the past. She said up until that point, like they really did have a good relationship. He was a good boyfriend. He always tried to make her feel special even though he didn't have a lot of money. He would always tell her like, I'm gonna get big so that I can get us a nice house. I can get my mom a big house. Like we're gonna have a really, really good life. Like you just have to believe in me. And she did believe in him. So it's a day after he gets home from his trip. She gets home from work. He's in his room doing like recording or whatever he does. She walks in the bedroom after work to like change her. He turns his to look at her and he's like, what the F are you doing? Get the F out of here. She said he had never talked to her like that. She was like taken aback. Like what's going on? It was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, different person. So she's like, what is your problem? She's like, don't talk to me like that. And his face softens and he's like, I'm sorry. Like I was just in the middle of something. He's like, I was just really, really into it. Like you just surprised me. That's all. And so she's like, okay. Like she lets it go because this is the first time it's ever happened. So she tries to be nice and she's like, well, show me what you're working on. Like I'm invested. I want to know. So he brings his laptop over. They're sitting on the bed. He's playing her this song that he's been working on that I guess he worked on while he was in LA with these people. And his like iMessages pops up on his computer because she said his texts were linked to his MacBook. And the text is from Jazz. Like she sees the name and the text said, let me know when you meet him and how he works for you, LOL. He X's the message out almost as soon as it pops up. Like he did not want her to see it, she felt like. So she was like, what was that? Like me too. And he was like, oh, just another person that they work with. Don't worry about it. So she's like, okay, let's it go. Couple weeks go by. He has another trip to go out and meet these people and work with them. She takes him to the airport. She's like, let me know when you land. He's like, I will. I love you. Bye. Gets on the plane. He lands. He doesn't text her. She checks his location. They shared locations on the phone. She sees that he landed, but she figures he's busy. He got picked up as soon as he landed. She's also going into work, so she doesn't think about it. She goes to work. She checks her phone on her break. He still has not texted her. It's been like 4 hours. So she texts him. She's like, did you make it? Okay. Checks his location. He's somewhere else. Not the same address that he was at the first time he was there. So she's got like 30 minutes on her break. So she looks up the address in her Apple Maps or whatever, figures out it's a house. It's a nice house. She texts him again. She's like, just call me when you have a minute. No response. A couple hours later, she gets home from work. His mom's there. She's like, hey, have you heard from so-and-so, her ex? His mom's like, no. Like, have you? And she's like, no. She's like, you should call him. So his mom calls him. He doesn't answer. The phone rings, so it's on, but he doesn't answer. So for the next 2 hours, her and her boyfriend's mom are trying to call him, but he's not answering. The phone's ringing. All the messages are being delivered. She goes like full FBI mode and she realizes that his iCloud login is logged into his mom's iPad because his mom didn't have one. She used his account to like get games or she used it for something. So it was logged into her iPad. So she logs into his messages. At this point in the email, she told me she doesn't care if other people think it's wrong or sneaky because you would do it too if you were in her situation. And she's able to pull up all of his text messages between him and Jazz. And she said when she first looked at the messages, she expected to find something like he was flirting with this girl or he was cheating or doing something scandalous. But actually it wasn't the case at all. There were no flirty text messages, but the messages were like super cryptic and just didn't make any sense to her. She scrolls all the way back to when Jazz texted him, let me know when you meet him and how he works for you, LOL. To which her boyfriend responded, I did meet him, he's already here. She said she couldn't make sense of a lot of the text messages, but there were other things that stood out to her. Like one text said, don't forget to practice what we taught you. Have you practiced today? There was another text that was sent at like 7 a.m. one morning when he was home, so not in LA. And it said, did you meet with him last night? How did you sleep? And there was another text because he had sent her a song clip that he was working on. And she had responded to the song clip saying, I can hear his influence clear in this one. The two of you are doing great things together. I'll send this to so-and-so, the producer, and I can't wait to see what the three of you do. So clearly they were talking about this other person that she had no idea who they were referring to because it wasn't the producer, it wasn't her boyfriend, and it wasn't Jazz. But he had been at home, like there was nobody else involved with this process. So she checks his location again. He's still at that same house. He doesn't respond to her that whole night. She doesn't sleep at all that night. He finally calls her around 7 in the morning. He's like, I'm so sorry, baby. Like, I was working. I was learning how to do all this stuff. Like, we were at the studio late. She's like, I know you weren't at the studio. Look, I can see your location. And he's like, oh, yeah, like we were at his house. He tells her basically that he has another studio at his house and that they were mentoring him pretty late into the night. So he's there for a couple more days. He talked to her the whole time. She didn't get any weird vibes or anything. She picks him up a couple days later when he flies home. He gets in the car from the airport. He leans over to hug her. He pulls away. She notices like 3 burn marks on his arm. She says she would have thought it was like from like a straightener or like a curling iron, but it was like right in the middle of his forearm, like right here. She's like, what's this? He's like, oh, I scratched myself. She's like, it looks like a burn. He's like, no, I scratched myself. He brushes it off. He's like, oh my God, the biggest things are happening. Like, I'm going to be able to like, get us this house. I'm going to be able to get my mom a house. Basically, he's so excited. She doesn't want to ruin his thunder. So she's just like, okay, cool. They get home. She's all excited. She thinks they're going to have like a nice night together because she hasn't seen him in a few days. And he pretty much shuts himself immediately in the room. He's like, I have to work. I have to do this stuff. He doesn't really come out the whole night. She goes in the room later to check on him, to like hang out. He's already asleep in bed, but he's like mumbling in his sleep. She tries to wake him up because she's like, I want to hang. He mumbles louder, but she said it wasn't real words. It was like not even a real language, but he was just making these noises with his mouth. She just gets in bed next to him. She tries to fall asleep, but his mumbling intensifies. She's having a hard time sleeping. She finally falls asleep. She's woken up before the sun comes up because he grabs her in his sleep and he says, you can't take her too. She wakes him up. She's like, you're dreaming. He wakes up. He's like, I'm sorry. I don't even know what I was dreaming about. They fall back asleep. At some point in the night, he wakes up again and basically tries to like force himself on her. She basically tells him, no, I'm sleeping, to which like he had a bad reaction. She said she looked at him. His eyes were fully open. Like he was awake. She's like, what are you doing? And he then like snapped out of it. He was like, I'm sorry. I must have been dreaming. Over the next couple of weeks, his anger and his temper intensifies. He's pretty much always locked in his room working. He's constantly snapping at her, his mom, and his daughter. At one point, he yelled at his little daughter so loud that it scared her. She was crying. She ran to her to comfort her. So now she's like taking care of his daughter pretty much all the time. And then it comes time for him to go back to LA. So she's like, I want to go with you this time. He's like, okay, cool. They get to the airport. Board the plane. He brings a water bottle that he bought at the airport onto the plane. He gets up before the plane takes off to go to the bathroom. While he's in the bathroom, she takes a sip of his water. He comes back, sees that she took a drink of his water bottle, and he just like flips on her. And he's like, he didn't say that you could have any of his water. And she's like, who? This is yours. And then she said it was like a change again. Like she saw his eyes change and he was like, I'm sorry, like you can drink my water. Then she's like, okay, this person has like split personality. She lets it go. They get there. She goes to the studio with him. Everything's fine. She meets Jazz. Jazz is really, really cold to her, keeps talking to her boyfriend, but like is like very dismissive of anything that she says. She keeps making like inside jokes with him, and then she tells him after they're done that it's time for her to go back to the hotel while he comes over for mentoring. And the girl that emailed me is like, absolutely not, like I'm going with you. Boyfriend looks torn. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna bring her, like we'll drive separate. We're gonna go back to our hotel first and then we'll meet you guys over there. They go back to the hotel. He's trying to convince her to stay at the hotel. He's like, you really don't want to be over there while they're just giving me tips and tricks about the industry? She's like, no, I want to go. They go back and forth for a little bit. Finally, he's like, okay, you can come, but there's something I have to tell you. Every time I've been out here, we've been doing rituals. They showed me something that I can do to channel a better part of myself. And she said immediately she did not like this. Red flags, because she believes in God. She doesn't think that you should be channeling anything. She tells him this. He's like, no, but like, look at my life since I've started doing it. Like everything is getting better. He said basically, I have to turn him on when I work, and that's the only way that we're going to be successful. He said, you believed in me then, believe in me now. She goes, I don't want any part of this. She decides she's going to stay at the hotel while he goes over there. He doesn't come back to the hotel that night. And she's pretty much like so disgusted with him at this point. She doesn't even contact him. So she leaves in the morning. She wakes up about 9 o'clock. They have another day at the hotel. She decides she's going to go get some breakfast from this like smoothie juice place down the street. She walked As she's on her walk to the juice place, he starts texting her, basically saying that he's sorry, that he got caught up in everything, that he loves her, that he wants her to be part of his new life. She ignores his text. She checks his location. She sees that he's still at the same house that he was at the last time he was there. She gets to the juice place, orders a smoothie, orders some breakfast. She sits down. He's still texting her. He's still trying to call her, but she's texting and FaceTiming with one of her friends who's back home in Atlanta. She said she was like basically talking to her friend for probably an hour when she sees him through the window of the juice place walking inside. She thinks he's there to apologize. They shared each other's location, so it wasn't like he just found her. Like, he knew where she was. He comes in, but he doesn't look happy to see her. He looks mad. He grabs the juice or like smoothie she's drinking, throws it in the trash, and starts basically berating her in public about how is she going to ignore him. She doesn't know how she has. How dare she embarrass him in front of all these new people that he's become friends with. When she objects, she's like, don't yell at me in public. He grabs her breakfast. I don't know what she's having, but he throws it on the floor in the juice place, to which at that point the employees come over and they basically tell them that they have to leave. She's so embarrassed because he's never acted like this. So she's like profusely apologizing to the employee when he yells at her in front of the employee, and he's like, why do you care what this person thinks and you don't care what he thinks? So again, this is another time that he's talking about himself in third person, and she's like, are you having a split personality episode? Like, what is going on? Because he had just started displaying these behaviors on the plane to go to LA on this trip. So after he has this meltdown in the juice place, she's walking back to the hotel. She's a few steps in front of him. He's behind her. He's yelling at him. And then she said about halfway back to the hotel, he just like switches off, and he's all of a sudden being nice to her. Like, baby, like, please don't go. Like, wait, we just need to talk. Listen to me. She's like, why don't you go hang out with your new friends? Like, that's like what's important. Like, if I had money, I would switch this flight right now. But basically they were still broke at that point. Like, he hadn't seen any real money come from his music. So she realizes that she really has nothing to do besides like go back to the hotel without him and just like wait for him to be done with whatever he's doing. But he follows her in the room. She's like, do I need to leave or are you gonna leave? He's like, no, I'll leave. After he leaves, he's sending her all these mean texts again. He's like blowing up her phone. She's not answering. He's leaving her all these mean voicemails about how she doesn't know what she has and she's making the biggest mistake of her life. She decides she's going to call his mom because she lived with him and his mom at the time. His mom obviously has no idea what's going on, and she was actually really close with his mom. So she calls his mom, tells her what's going on, and his mom's like, absolutely not. Like, I'm going to call him. The girl's like, well, don't do it on my behalf. Like, I'm basically done with him. Like, I'm just letting you know because I respect you and you've been really kind to me. And his mom's like, I'm going to talk to him. So a little while later, he comes back to the hotel. He brings her lunch. He brings her flowers. He brings her like all the things that she likes. And he profusely apologizes, saying that he doesn't know what happened. And all of this success, this relatively newfound success is just going to his head. And he's so sorry and he loves her. And will she please come back to the studio with him tonight? She brings up the fact that Jazz, the girl that works for the producer, has been really rude to her. And he's like, I'll talk to her. Nobody's going to disrespect you in front of me. Like, I promise you things will be different tonight. And she really does love him. So she decides that she's going to give it a chance. She goes to the studio. Apparently when they got there, Jazz said something snarky to her, to which her boyfriend immediately jumps to her defense and says, like, don't talk to her like that. Like, she is part of me. If you're gonna, respect me, then you need to respect her. After they finish recording or doing whatever, they're there for a couple hours. They're going to go back to the producer's house, apparently to do another one of these rituals, which he keeps calling mentoring. They all get back there. The producer goes in another room. I guess he's not actually in the room for this ritual. So it's her, it's Jazz, it's her ex-boyfriend, and then it's some other guy that she doesn't know. She says they led them to what she can only describe as like a ritual room, which was just like a completely dark room with fabric on the walls and on the carpet. There were a few mirrors in odd places, but nothing really else. There was a bowl of water in the center. They all sit around, and before they start, her ex-boyfriend leaves the room, and Jazz grabs her hand in her hand. She looks at it. She puts her palm to her palm, and she says, you need to let go if you want him to be successful. You need to basically let him absorb what he's going to absorb from this if you want to have the life that you want for him and for yourself. She looks her in the eye. She's like, are you willing to do that? And the girl who emailed me basically says, like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't like any of this. Like, he's talented on his own merit. He doesn't need to be doing any of this, and I don't know what you guys are trying to get him into, but I don't like it, and I'm not going to sit by and just let him do this. She basically asked Jazz, is this devil worship? Like, what are you exactly doing? And Jazz says it's just to let him tap into a higher part of himself that will let him be successful. She says the words devil, entity, nothing like that was ever mentioned in this conversation. Her ex comes back in the room. He's like, can I talk to you alone? They go out. He basically tells her, look, just give it a chance. You don't have to participate. If you want to, tell me not to do this after this night, then fine. But like, just at least give it a chance. So she's like, okay. So he comes back in the room. They all sit. They turn down the lights. And she said, although she expected something sinister, something dark, something like devil worshipy, it was really nothing like that. It was basically just a guided meditation that Jazz led. The only difference was, instead of what she would describe as like a self-worth meditation, they kept putting power into him. So Jazz would say, I trust him with guiding me to make all of the better creative decisions for my life. I don't know exactly what she said, but basically along those lines. When the girl who emailed me asked, like, who is him, Jazz just said, it's his better self. She basically then asked, well, then why isn't he saying, I trust myself to make creative decisions on my career's behalf? Jazz is just dismissive. She's like, it doesn't work like that. You have to put your belief in him. She says there were no substances, no alcohol, nothing like that involved. She said she did feel scared at certain points, but she just kind of quietly prayed to herself. And then as she watched her boyfriend, it was almost like his face was changing before her, although she couldn't exactly put her finger on what was changing about his face. Apparently they get back to Atlanta and he continues doing these like self meditations that are not about himself. He speaks of himself in third person almost constantly. When he doesn't like something, he refers to he doesn't like that. And then whenever she brings it up to him, he's just like, yeah, I just have a hard time turning it on and off. This went on for a few months. His career really started blowing up, but he was so angry every single time he was home. He treated her like garbage. He treated his mom like garbage. He treated his daughter like garbage. She said it felt like she was walking on eggshells anytime she was around him. It all boiled over one night when she accidentally interrupted him when he was working on a song. She didn't know that he was recording, but she walked in the room. He was so angry. He came over to her desk and took her computer and smashed it. He said something along the lines of, now you know what it's like when you interrupt him. And she said that she had just had enough. She basically told him she was done. His mom basically begged her not to leave when she broke up with him. She ended up moving in with her friend. He would go back and forth texting her and calling her, basically being really nice, saying he wanted her back, saying he wanted to work it out and have a family with her, buy her a nice house. And then if she didn't respond, he would get completely angry, refer to himself in third person, saying, you made the wrong mistake, making him angry. He'll make you pay for what you did. She said this continued for several months until she finally just blocked him on everything. He did go on to date Jazz, and she said that she thinks that they may be expecting a baby. Jazz is not her real name, by the way. I just made that up for the story. I know some people said like, oh, there's this rapper and he was dating or married to this girl named Jazz. It's not that. I literally just pulled that out of thin air. But yeah, I don't know who it is. All I know is that he went to high school in Atlanta. The song went viral around 2020, but he had been making music before that. And he is apparently a household name who is successful now. And honestly, I just keep going back and forth because I don't know if he was just cheating on her the whole time with Jazz or if he really did make some kind of deal behind closed doors the first or second trip when she wasn't there. She said she goes back and forth too, but with the speed in which his personality changed, she believes that there was something sinister at play. I know a lot of people commented on that first video too, saying that they knew people in the music industry who had experienced similar things. So yeah, that's all I know. Let me know your thoughts. I have gotten other selling